Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Ang,
And I'm Cindy Kay.
and welcome to our podcast, Superpower and Sidekick.
Where we choose to connect to spirit to live a abundant life beyond our imagination.
Yes.
So I don't judge myself too bad for my past mistakes because it wasn't all me.
And that's the part about like being hard on ourselves too, goes back
Right.
to that. And we judge
Totally goes
ourselves
back.
and
Well, and that's
yeah.
what I was saying, that it's like we just pick up the whip and start abusing ourselves, and we don't even need the abuser around anymore to do it. A hypercritical parent becomes your hypercritical inner voice. And I'm sure they don't mean to do that. It's not like that's the difference between unconscious and coming into intention and consciousness. That's why intention is so important, because the first thing it does is it brings you out of the unconscious realm quickly. There's a Rush song, even if you choose to not decide, you have made a choice.
Very true.
And to me, that's the difference between conscious reality and running on unconscious programming and conditioning.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's so important if you haven't chosen the spiritual path and to do this work. I'm not speaking to you anyway because you're not here listening to me. You're not going to even be interested in what I'm talking about. But when you do decide to, the responsibility changes. And the responsibility has a lot to do with your attitude.
Hmm. Yeah.
For myself, I cannot drink. And it's because of spiritual possession and attachments and things like this. I I got pushed down some stairs once when I was drunk, and I felt the hands on the back of my legs. I have no doubt I was pushed. And I had been doing some pretty intense spiritual work. So, we have to remember it's important that we are extremely connected, because if we lose that connection, we also lose our protection. Connection is very to do this work. Now, if you're not doing this work, you're not under the same responsibility. But what I've chosen to do is very important for me to stay connected to the highest frequency I can, because otherwise I can be pushed around by the invisible world. And that's the reason I get migraines from alcohol anyway, and it's a weird one. So my body's not going to let me do it anyway. But I chose not to, because I couldn't be in the right space and connected enough that I'm not going to be pushed around.
Yeah, that's a good point about the protection because even if even if, people don't like you or hate you, as long as you're on your path and what you're doing, you are always protected.
Always.
Yeah.
And the more that I stay connected, the more I'm not worried about if so and so likes me or not anyway. It was only when I was thoroughly disconnected did I worry too much about being a people pleaser. The more connected I came to my own divine source, the less I was trying to vampire off of others. Codependency comes from a lack of connection to source. And, you know, I'm not too worried about like protection, because sometimes that's coming from a fear base, and you're just actually bringing fear in. And that's not protection when you're doing that. But the invisible world is real, and there is things that are scary in there. But fear feeds that and attracts it to you. So the last thing you want to do is use a fear-based method to try to protect yourself. It's actually much better to use that love-based way through connection to divine source. If you are connected to divine source, really nothing can touch you in a weird way. Not saying that life doesn't still happen, but it feels different. And the perspective of what is happening is a lot different. So I don't worry too much about like, oh, I've got to put a protective da 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 da. I really try to connect and go to the highest frequency I can because I know that automatically puts it around me.
Because you're focused on your mission rather than all the noise that's around it, so you don't have that fear at all.
I focused on what I chose. I invited
Yeah,
spirit into my life.
yeah.
I sent the invitation, and boy, did it meet and greet me
Hmm,
in really big ways, and still surprising me daily.
hmm.
I ordered a desk and I got 4 of them, and then they refunded my money. And I mean, you never know. The infinite universe can do crazy things. I've been having some weird things happen, but abundance is a mindset and it's a choice because it's just like you can have your freedom and be in jail. When you look at, if you're looking at it from a mindset, your mind can still be free. Your your psyche can be free. That's a choice. And it's not necessarily by outside conditions. And that's why connection's so important, because you can be in a situation like that, but if you're fully connected to the divine, it's not going to feel the same. It definitely changes the experience of life for me. It I'm way more gratified. I feel gratification. I don't have that hole that I'm constantly trying to feed anymore.
Like you're being fulfilled.
And I'm
Like,
looking to fill myself as well. I'm opening the container and allowing it to pour in, inviting it to pour in. I'm in one of my friend's oracle decks, and I have a card, and she asked me, "What's your medicine? What would you want to tell the world?" And what came forth immediately, and it's still probably my number one thing: connection is our best protection.
that's a good motto. You should trademark that.
I should. I've got another friend that calls them Cinda-isms.
Syndeisms.
And I have a whole plethora of Cinda-isms.
Hmm.
Because I kind of had to create a new language. There really wasn't a language for some of the things that I felt like I was experiencing. There's a lot more about it now. It was kind of like when I found out I was celiac. Any of the gluten-free things you found tasted like and felt like a hockey puck. It was just like, oh, really? This is horrible. But now you go out there and you can find gluten-free things that are better than gluten things. And it's lovely now. So, and I really do think that that's a lot of what, mysticism is coming back into the mainstream. And they hid it from us for so long, but our souls are seeking it. So people are finding it again. That, I've heard people coin it the Great Awakening. And, it's so funny. We're always in our own little micro and don't realize, oh, no, no, you're a bigger part of the whole thing. And, that's the reason I never really that was something I kind of wanted to talk about. And it's funny, it just came back into my mind. So I'll bring it in. Is that some people on the spiritual path or in certain spiritual teachings is kind of, if you notice, some people get a little entitled. There's some entitlement. Oh, I know something you don't know. I have telepathy. I'm psychic. But it's like in an egoistic entitlement way, I have something you do not have. And that is not at all, that's just not how I feel at all. I really do feel that everybody is a component of it. And I see this little honeybee hive, and the micro and the macro are at work, and we're all in our little thing, and we're making some big changes in the paradigm. But I know I work with people and I give readings and I talk with people enough. I know that there's people out there doing better work than what I am, but we're all really doing that work of breaking old paradigms and old conditioning so that way we can bring more love into this planet and have a more blissful experience and create heaven on earth. I mean, how else can we create heaven on earth unless we stay here fully grounded and then open to that divine connection? That's how we bring heaven to earth.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be experiencing hell on earth.
Been there, done that. And if I can choose to create something else, I would really much rather. And it does lie in attitude, and it does lie in how I perceive my experience and how attached I am to the past or how worried I am about the future. And that affects my frequency of here and now and my experience of what I'm experiencing today. I don't know, I had some pretty severe abusive experiences in childhood and young adulthood. And I also went through a whole lot of self harm from that. And if I can do anything to ease my suffering or anybody else's now, I'm a willing participant. But I would really rather step back from the fight. And it's because I got weary of it.
So I think one of the things we wanted to talk about was the conditioning and how men, boys, are conditioned not to feel their
Emotion.
emotions.
And it's not just them, because young girls were also taught to be perfect and prim and proper. And we're not allowed to, if we're assertive, oh, you sure are angry. And assertive, and assertive in a man, that's okay, but it's not okay in a woman. So on both sides of the duality, it is both way out of balance. And basically 90% of us, I don't know how many percent, but a whole bunch of us are walking around completely disassociated from our emotions. And when we get disassociated from our emotions, we are actually completely disconnected from our intuition. And I do think that's one reason, though, it is easier for women to become psychics, so supposedly. It is more known as a feminine quality, intuition is, because it's receptive rather than going out. But of course, both genders can absolutely be a vessel for that. This isn't actually about genders at all. This is about conditioning that anger is bad and you should beat yourself up for it. And boys are not allowed to cry because, boy, howdy, that sure is girly.
Right.
Wait a minute, that implies men don't have pain and they're not having the whole thing about this is they're trying to say that we're not having a human experience and don't have a human experience, and tell me that that's not insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first keys of being able to connect with your intuition is to actually be connected, or not, I'm not talking attachment. You don't be attached to a mood or an emotion. Emotions are very, they're like water. They're like, and it's that receptive quality. That's why it's with emotion, and intuition is a female trait, but men can absolutely have it. My husband is a feeler, and his feelings were so big he didn't know how to regulate them, and the people around him did it the old way and put him in sports and said, you shouldn't feel that. Here, go run it off on the sports, with the soccer ball. So his only way to really process his emotions is to go out and run with the soccer ball. Or, and for instance, but, for my own self, my emotions were so deregulated. I was so because I was told over and over that my experience wasn't real. So then I didn't trust my emotion. And it wasn't until I found community that accepted every part of my being, even if I was having an emotional day, did I really start learning how to integrate, and how important that is when we come into conscious awareness, is to have a relationship with our emotions. And I believe that the three in like Hinduism or yoga, they talk about the five koshas, and that's a whole nother thing, different layers of the body, the light body to the physical body. And it's a beautiful teaching. But just on a more basic fact of it, a basic outline of it would be that emotions sit between our physical body and our emotional body to give signals. So it connects the two bodies. So if you feel uncomfortable, you need to move. But most of us, men especially, have been taught to override that. So then they learn other kind of nefarious ways, manipulation, and some of more of the toxic ways, because they're not allowed to express their real emotions.
And that's embracing your emotions is actually very powerful because as you know, I had an experience with my dad recently about that, and I was really angry with him, and I embraced it, and I told him how I felt.
And you articulated,
Yeah,
which is a
without,
response. It is not, even if you're mad, you can be
hmm
angry and
yeah,
respond without, not that you don't have some reaction, but it's more of a response.
right, right. So I basically it helped me to set boundaries with him. And I felt very empowered in that moment because I kind of stood up to him and said, you can't treat me like this. I don't care if you're my father.
I don't care who you are.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
going to take
and
IDs at this point.
yeah. So that I think is very true. You have to embrace your emotions and work through it and feel it. And then by the end of the evening, I was like, I was fine again. I didn't,
It's so much easier
I
to
wasn't,
process things, and they don't get
yeah,
stuck and turn into resentment. How many men are resentment or have been trained to resent women out the bat? I mean, it's an automatic conditioned response. The resentment is like already there. And it's very hard to have relationship in that kind of a climate. But we get resistant to what we don't understand. And then so if we're not allowed to embrace and explore our emotions, and the only thing we're allowed to do is suppress them or say that they're not there and put on a perfect facade, or go chase your soccer ball. Don't you dare have an emotion. Don't you feel what's happening to you. That's an abuser way of getting us to shut up. And, I lost my voice completely because of some trauma that happened. Not completely, but I could not articulate. When I got mad, it was going to go straight into trigger. I could not articulate what was hurting because it hurt so bad. Um, but whenever I did finally start, there was some coercive things in my relationship with Mike, because in the 80s was weird, and only all the little boys, they'd learned on all media out there that if a girl says no, that's not really what she means. No, no means no. And coercion is not consent. But some of this stuff was going on, and the only reason I was still allowing it was because I was disassociated from my emotions by a previous abuser. And whenever I had a moment where I was in complete rage, and rather than judging myself for it or allowing somebody else to judge me for it, either one, I went, wait a minute. And I owned my rage, and then I embraced it. And man, I had every right to feel what I was feeling. It was not, it was very appropriate to what was happening. And whenever I accepted that, all of a sudden I could articulate it, and it changed the game.
it's amazing, isn't
It
it?
is.
Very, very empowering.
Then I
Very,
actually, I
yeah,
don't like rage. Nobody wants to feel
yeah,
rage on a consistent basis, but
yeah.
rage was my hero.
hmm
She saved me.
Yeah. Because once you feel it, then you're able to articulate.
And I think the minute that we suppress it, it goes down into our unconscious realm and
Yeah,
starts controlling us from the unconscious. The minute we
right,
suppress it, it's in control of the situation, but we don't know it.
right, right. Yeah, exactly.
And
And
I
then
think
it blows up at
suppression
other
and
times. But
repression. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, and then it'll just blow up another time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's whenever we trigger, or, it's because we have unprocessed emotions that were denied rather than processed. And that's what shadow work is for. That's why shadow work is so important on the spiritual path. If we do not know our whole selves, then yeah, we're going to be a codependent magnet walking out there. And it's not that we have to fix our shadow. It's that we have to see that it's the part of our humanity and it's just a part of us and accept that. And yes, it may or may not change at that point, but that's not always the point of it. Shadow work is saying, yes, this is here. It is a component in my environment. And by seeing it, it is no longer creating without me.
And it's part of your being too, right? Because I mean, we were created with emotions. We're humans,
They're
and
there for
we're
something.
feelings.
I can't believe that we would have something like that because we are a miracle of nature. Why wouldn't the emotions have a place? Why would we have to be perfect? Why aren't we allowed to be angry? Why aren't we allowed to be confused? Emotions, if you feel uncomfortable, you're probably in the wrong place. You don't need to override that. But most of us have been conditioned to override our emotions, which suppresses and represses them. That is one reason I do believe we have so many pedophiles in our society. Purity culture created them. Because rather than being able to express that we are creatures of nature and we have instincts and things that go with that, and that when we deny that, a lot of times it gets perverse and it comes out in the wrong way.
Yeah, I used to have a problem with dealing with my. I didn't realize I had anger issues until Mary told me that I have anger issues.
I might have had a clue about that, but that's okay. We're not in a
Yeah.
relationship in that aspect, so it wasn't my place to tell her I'm glad Mary did that. The way I
Okay.
knew you had anger issues is because I could see the depression.
Mm,
It's not so much anger, it's that I knew you weren't in a happy place. So there's something under there.
mm, yeah. So yeah, I think working through our shadows is really important.
Well, and I think it also helps us to overcome any kind of a codependent relationship because when we don't see our shadow, our black hole goes around and tries to suck what it's missing out of everybody else on the planet. But when we recognize our own black hole and we start really feeding it and nurturing it and taking care of that 3-year-old that didn't get the love she needed when she needed it, or whatever it might be, that when we start really doing that work, we're also not thinking, oh, I'm a half and I have to have my other half to be happy. We can be happy and then share that with somebody. It's a whole different way to do things. I would rather have a full cup and sit down on the table and share my full cup with a friend than I would go, hey, I'm completely lacking here and I expect you to make me happy.
Yeah.
I might have been a black hole once or twice. Um, you know, we've all done a little evolving, but that's
Yeah.
what repressed and suppressed emotion does is it turns us into an energy vampire and it creates codependency. One of the ways to really become whole, and then we never need a relationship to complete us. Can you tell I really don't like that saying. I don't believe in a second half. I am a whole, complete, entity as I am. He is a whole, complete entity as he is. We don't know. That is not what I believe marriage is. And I will do anything we can to change the perspective on that and the paradigm of it. That we have to be whole individuals in order to have healthy relationships. If we are not whole individuals, we are having codependent relationships and we are asking everybody else to feed our black hole for us. Okay, and I think that's a worthy topic right there. Is one of the things that I teach. I give readings and I do spiritual teachings with people, and I cover all kinds of weird stuff. It just goes off for and on forever. But one of the tools that I found that is so helpful is magnetizing helpful people to us, attracting the helpful people into our life, because almost every single opportunity that we have comes through another person. It's actually a real feng shui thing. I didn't make this up. I'm a tool seeker. I go out and I seek tools. And this is one that I have found over and over and over again to be helpful. That, every time we find a house, it's because of through word of mouth. This person tells you about it, or this job, or, this, it always seems to come. We are a community animal. We are not a lone wolf. And so many of the changes in life that we are seeking actually come through other helpful people. But we can actually, I have a whole solar plexus technique, but you're really just increasing your own self-worth and your aura. And as you do that and send out that high vibration into the world, it helps attract the helpful people to you for the changes, like if you're stuck in this and you want this change, or, hey, this house isn't working for me anymore, I need a new house, or, whatever it might be. Rather than seeking the house, seek the person that's going to tell you about the right house. I found it to be a pretty worthy technique. So, being able to attract helpful people into your life. Because, we were talking recently about attachments. Energy is kinetic. So what we put out there is what comes back with us into us. But doing it consciously changes the game, rather than just letting our unconscious, repressed and suppressed emotions constantly run the game.
Yeah. And you guys do have an amazing community there.
Beautiful, beautiful people that definitely believe in supporting one another.
Yeah.
It's a nice little
That's how
place
it
to
should
land.
be. That's how it should be. I feel like we've kind of gotten away from that.
How many people in suburbans don't even know what their next door neighbor's name is?
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
I remember I'd walk through it. New Mexico and Missouri are two different planets. They are not the same planet. And I would walk through a grocery store in Missouri and go to make eye contact with someone. I thought they were going to dive underneath the apple bin. That, oh my gosh, I had just totally invaded their privacy, and how dare I even look at them. I walk around in New Mexico and we look at each other and we smile and we wave and we say hi, and it's just a different way of doing things. So I've kind of known a little bit of this, but not what this little town has been able to develop. And there's also, not everyone gets along, trust me. But they can talk bad about each other, but you better not talk bad about them. There is that too. So what, like a sibling relationship almost. But I don't have I have a few family members that I'm close with, but I have many that I'm estranged from. And I did definitely need a second family, so to speak. And I feel like I'm getting that here. But it's also about being in the right place. I felt something about this place since I was 13. I didn't know I would ever live here, though. And then when the synchronicities started happening to bring me here, I'm still over the moon amazed. I almost thought it was out of my scope because it's not necessarily an easy town to get into. And I knew that. I knew it was, there's just not much house. There's not many houses, and I could go out and off grid it. Absolutely. But I have some problems with propane and stuff. So I really would like to stay a little bit on grid, even though I do like to live an alternative lifestyle. I do. I don't feel like I need a huge house and a car that's going to eat a ton of gas. And I'm happy just with what I need. I'm not I'm not big into excess. I didn't need 4 desks. So I'm glad I only got 3. I need to quit saying that reference because it's not going to make any sense anywhere. But There's a video game glitch whenever you're playing with prosperity techniques, and sometimes it goes off the wall and you end up with more than you ever thought. And gamers out there understood my reference. They got what I meant.
That is one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
You know, I splurged on a new desk, and they sent me 3 of them and then refunded my money and apologized that they got lost in the mail. So, you know, glitches sometimes work in our favor, not just against us. But I also, you know, to me, it's a little bit of an example, though, about how the universe can provide abundantly. That you just have to decide to go ahead and splurge on yourself. You know, there is, for abundance mindset, self-worth is very much so tied into, and I'm not talking, again, it's not that elite, I'm better than, I deserve more than, I don't mean it like that. It's just, I am worthy. And that is a lot of how we do actually manifest abundance, is knowing that we're worth it and we can have it. And so many of us, we've been taught to not be open to receive. You're not good enough to receive. How dare you even ask for something? Who do you think you are? Because they're all over there fighting over that pie, and you might get it. Mm-hmm. God forbid you go in there and bake a new pie. So, you know, mindset is so important in this work.
Yeah.
And choosing our focus.
And attitude.
Very much so, attitude. And I mean, come on. You tell me you never wake up without an yes. That's why it takes adjustment. It's called an attitude adjustment. And that's how, you know, I kind of look at myself as a radio receiver, and oh man, I'm really picking up the static today. I better dial in my frequency a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see our like raising our frequency is kind of like the radio. And if you tune in to a certain frequency, the channel comes in, right? The
and you're going
station
to
comes in.
resonate with it, and it's going to make sense, and you're going to understand everything. Or they're going to play your favorite song, and it's going to express exactly what you're wanting to express in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when it's off, you're picking up the channel that's coming in through accidentally 3 other channels because all the lines are crossed out there, and you don't even know who you're listening to, and it's probably not even your own thoughts. That was the weirdest thing for me, you know, when I realized I am a telepathic being. I've found suicide victims because I'm telepathic. So it's definitely real, and our antennas can pick it up, and we don't realize it. That can be the scary part.
So what happens when you find those suicide victims?
I call the police to come take care of it. I don't know what else you can do. I admit that I've kind of had a path with suicide because of some of my own trauma and things that happened to me in my youth. But I was like, how come I only find them afterwards? How come I'm never put in front of this? And actually this year I've had 3 instances where I've been shown that I had stopped it and didn't even know I had been able to stop somebody from making that choice, or, you know, support them to not make that choice. So I didn't know that, because I do choose to be a channel of the divine, that I had already helped. I thought I'd only found the aftermath. And in one of the other half of the equation of that was that by putting me there, I have an understanding and compassion that not everybody might have for a suicide victim, because I had been down the road. I don't agree with some of I don't believe that they're damned to hell forever. I do think they could get stuck here because there's no one that's going to love them and pray for them and help them to go back on the path. I think that could happen. But I think it's more out of a lack of compassion in the human realm than what it is in the spiritual realm. because we help each other and we don't know it energetically as we transition into the other realms. But everyone wants to turn their back. And that's actually the soul that needs all of us turning to them. And I can do that because I don't judge it. I also see not all suicidal ideologies, but I do see a lot of them as actually spiritual attachments. It is low frequencies perturbing somebody, using their own trauma against them and manipulating them into doing something that they may not even necessarily would have chose to do without that spiritual attachment. And I've had things to back that theory up. So it's a working theory. I've had some pretty big things happen. So, and I've known people that after a suicide happened in their realm, started having that same kind of ideology itself because it's frequency and transferable. That's why attitudes, we don't realize how we can be manipulated through negative attitudes. And we need to look for the bright spot. It's there. But sometimes we have to look for it and then find it and focus on it so that way the other doesn't take us over. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not at all spiritual bypassing and saying, oh, you just do this and everything's great. I know for myself, it was a good 14-year process, really. I don't know how many years, that's just what came to mind, but it was a long process. It wasn't just overnight, oh, I fixed that. I also don't look at myself that I have to fix me anymore. I don't think I'm that as messed up and broken as I used to think. And I was not near as messed up and broken back then. So, it was a conditioned judgment.
Yeah.
That was not accurate.
So do you think that you feel that way now because of all the years of I guess the spiritual tools that you have now and how you look at things, or
Absolutely. That I started seeking, things were happening to me spiritually, and I started seeking, what is that? Give me a name for that so I can understand it and so I can articulate it and so I can get connected to it and change my lived experience. I sought that. I'm a seeker. I went on a quest. My life was, and I didn't want to live there anymore. So I put on my expedition gear, started heading up on that mountain, and started seeking another way to do things. And the tools helped, because that is the first thing that started helping me to adjust my frequency, because what was wrong with me and what was creating my hell was in frequencies. And the itty bitty shitty committee in the brain that helped to constantly reprocess those spiritual attachments that are not fun. It's definitely a cycle, and we have to choose to break it. I remember having a negative spiritual experience when I was 12, and I screamed at them, you can't have me. And it probably took me till about 2006 until I actually had the tools to accomplish that.
would you care to talk more about it?
My grandfather had some mental illness and tried to actually kill the entire family. And they found him slit ear to ear and said it was a suicide. I definitely actually believe that more than likely somebody defended themselves. But over my spiritual path, I've actually come to believe that my family was shamans back in the day and were killed during the witch hunts. And so the spiritual knowledge was there, but all the spirits that needed help kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And then, because there's a lot of families, you'll hear people talk about familia possession, family possession. And I definitely believe that that is what I had a case of. And not just myself, other family members as well. But I won't go into any of that. I was adamant that they weren't going to drive my boat, that I wanted control of my flesh being. And that's why I think I do what I do now. But I also, I did have some of those superpowers that sure did feel like curses before I had an understanding and tools how to use them. So it's not just some of the trauma and the drama. Some of it was, I was definitely seeking enlightenment. I had abilities, but I didn't know how. I didn't get the manual.
Yeah, it's hard to actually have the tools and not know how to use it.
I mean,
Or-
it's an existential question. I got to the point, there has to be more to life than this. And boy, I didn't realize I was just opening up a Pandora box, but a good one, a fun one. And, I asked the right question. And it's so important whenever we work with spirit that we learn how to ask the right question. Because sometimes we're so disassociated by our emotions and how we feel, we don't even know what we like and what we don't like and how to ask for what we need. That's the reason I do believe that when we meditate, it's in order to get to know ourselves. We need to actually meet our true selves, because none of us actually, we only know our conditioned self and what the outside world has told us who we are. So we go inside to get our own description of who we are rather than what the world has conditioned us into being. So I do meditation to get to know myself. So I have a relationship, not just with my creator and source, but also the real me, not the conditioned me. The one that doesn't have the scarecrow stuffed brain. I saw some kind of a study recently that they have decided through scientific whatever that there really is no true self will because how young we are when the conditioning starts. That there's literally no way we could even know what our free will is. We've been in a conditioned society for so long now. So I think that's kind of what the job is right now, is breaking that so we can have our own experience rather than the one we've been told we have to have. I'd rather create something different. And I've been able to. So it succeeded. When I asked the question, is there any more to this? Yes. The answer was yes. Resounding. Yes. All I had to do was ask.
Hmm. So how
Okay.
do you know what kind of questions to ask?
For myself, it's because I have a lot of inner dialogue with my guides. And so I've gotten to where I've done it so much, I can almost feel if I ask something that's not going to get back what I'm actually seeking energetically. It's an energetic, like, wait a minute, my question. I realized so often I didn't even know my own dislikes and likes. When I was little, I wasn't allowed any body autonomy at all with my mother. I couldn't decide how my own hair was, I couldn't decide how to dress. I wasn't allowed any decision about my own being. So I really had to go on a path to go, what's my favorite color? I'm not sure. you know, what is it? What do I like? And I think a lot more of us are like that, but we just may not be aware. We like what we've been told to like, and we don't even know to question that.
Yeah.
I went through enough suffering, I questioned it, and I started changing my questions. And I saw that as I played with my questions with spirit, that it changed what came back. So it was very much how I communicated and in communion with for what I got back and where my attitude was. Tarot has been the best tool on the planet to learn about my own. If I want to reflect my attitude and see where I'm responsible for my own shit, I just need to pull a card. It'll tell me. You did this to yourself, fool. You want to do it different? You need to make another choice.
Mm. So, are you asking the questions open-ended, or is it like a yes/no to where you're getting an answer that way, or
Oh, you
how
mean
is
like
it?
with tarot? No, not necessarily. It's more like I find the stream and I jump in. I don't know how to explain that. Like when I'm working with another client, I'm not going to know what their questions are.
Oh, no, no, I meant like
Oh, for
when you
myself.
were talking about the relationship with spirit and asking the right questions. So, are your questions open-ended, or is it more like so that you can get like a yes or no
More
answer?
of an all of the above. I try it all different ways. I've experimented in all ways. It's that I know when the answer comes back clearly and when I stay confused. And I realize by attuning my question, it really helps when the answer comes through. And that if I don't get the answer that I'm seeking, that I need to adjust my question
Because you're still confused.
because I'm still confused.
Ah,
It was Lumen Dang that said that. If you don't know, keep asking. He was the one that taught me to do that. So if I was confused, I just kept asking. And then all of a sudden I would ask the right question. Boom, the aha would come. And I realized I'm the one with the power. I just have to ask the right question. And that took soul seeking. I had to know myself. I had to know what does Cinda like, what does Cinda not like. I had to come out of my conditioning to understand what that black hole needed in order to be filled. We all have a black hole. I have never met anybody. That's why we're codependent, dualistic beings right now. And we don't necessarily, and a lot of it is coming through our conditioned society because we don't know how to fill our hole. And we think somebody else is supposed to complete us. It's backwards paradigm, in my humble opinion. And it doesn't work. I got to a brick wall. That's the reason I started doing it another way. And because I did realize I was telepathic, I'm like, oh, I have a line to heaven. I'm going to keep asking. I'm going to keep asking. I'm going to keep asking. And things started, and I saw it because all of a sudden, when I got to the right answer, the clarity or the right question, that's when the clarity would hear it. And so often I would be asking the question all the way around it and not even knowing it is because I was asking out of my conditioned mind rather than my heart and soul. So I have to go in and sit and meditate to find out in my heart. Or not even that. It just hit me. It's not just about meditation. It's about coming out of disassociation and not staying uncomfortable. So that way you know what you like and what you don't like. And allowing your rage to say, I don't like that.
mm-hmm.
And allowing your joy and your bliss to go, oh, I like that and I want more of that.
That's a good point. See, you kind of came full circle again with our feelings.
I like how that happens.
Yeah. I guess that's a good place to end then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, we have to know ourselves. That's the purpose for meditation. But we have to come out of disassociation and accept all of our beings. We have to accept ourselves even if we are in a bad mood and attitude, you can't change that without accepting where you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
So enough of repression and suppression and perfectionism, and allow Mother Nature and all of her divine messy glory. And please, if you can, keep the conversation rolling. If this brought up anything in you, leave a comment. Find me on social media. I'm also at cindakay.com, CINDAKAY.com. And drop me a line. Be a part of the conversation. Let's make this interactive.
All right. See you on the next podcast.